Jai Swaminarayan. Today let's read the second verse of the second Gadhadā of the Vachanāmrut, of course. This passage is titled, A Small Streamlet of Water. Let's dive right into it. On Shravan Sudhi the 3rd Samvat 1878, or the 1st of August 1821, Swami Sri Sahajanandji Maharaj was sitting on a small silken embroidered cloth in front of the mandir of Sri Vasudev Narayan in Dada Akshar's darbar in Gadhadā. He was dressed entirely in white clothes. At that time, some munis were singing devotional songs to the accompaniment of a jhanj and mridang, while other munis as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him in an assembly. Thereupon Sriji Maharaj said, "Please stop singing as I wish to speak to you." So saying, Sriji Maharaj began, "One who wishes to attain ultimate liberation and aspires to become a sadhu, a spiritual seeker like Narad, the Deva Rishi, and the Sanakadik, the four mental sons of Brahma, the Creator, should think, in this body resides the jiva, the soul, and the indriyas and antakaran, the outer and inner senses, have attached themselves to that jiva. They have also attached themselves externally to the panch vishayas, the experiences of the five senses. However, due to ignorance, the jiva, the soul, believes those indriyas and the antakaran to be its own form, whereas in actual fact it is distinct from them. That is to say, the jiva in ignorance, which is our common state nowadays, believes that we are the eyes and the ears and the mouth and the skin and the nose. We are the body which is holding these senses, and we are the mind, the intellect, the ego, and the reflection of consciousness, which are part of the antakaran. Whereas in actual fact, we are something distinct from them. The vishayas, the objects of experience, are also distinct from the antakaran. But because of constant association with them, they appear to have become one with the antakaran. This is a subtle point, that we've even gone to the point where we think that the mind is one with the material existence, part of the vishayas, the objects. Nowadays, many scientists believe that the mind is somehow an epiphenomenon arising from the brain chemistry, which of course is scientifically accurate according to evidence, but from the traditional spiritual perspective, it's not true. We've gone to the point in our society where we now call the brain the mind. That when we are referring to the mind, we often just say brain. That, oh, my brain is being like this. Oh, my brain is thinking like that. But the brain is not the one thinking. The mind is the abode of thoughts. The brain just happens to be the hardware. And it's an important distinction, not so different from a computer and the operating system. The operating system runs on the computer. When we say the computer is misbehaving too, what we really mean, usually, is that the operating system is faulty. Some of the software components have become glitchy or uncommunicative to each other or something. The actual hardware itself is fine and distinct, and that hardware could run different operating systems. You can have one computer but run Linux or Windows or Mac OS on it. In the same way, we have to distinguish our mind from our brain. Technically speaking, the brain is in the mind. If you really observe closely your experience, you'll notice the only reason we know of the brain is through our senses. That we didn't discover the mind by looking at our brain. We discovered our brain by looking through the mind. In the same way, the objects of our experience and the body too, we discover through our senses. We discover through our mind, not the other way around. This points to a very subtle but profound fact that actually the universe is an epiphenomenon of you rather than the other way around. So let's continue. In fact, the desire to indulge in the Vishayas, indulge in the objects of experience, actually arise because of the Indriyas, not because of the Antahkaran. And this is now shifting topics a little bit about the desire to see beautiful things, hear beautiful sounds, taste beautiful tastes, smell beautiful smells, and feel beautiful feelings. You might think that that desire arises from the mind, but here Sriji Maharaj is telling us that desire is embedded in the senses themselves, which we are separate from, and the mind is separate from too. For example, extreme heat or cold first comes into contact with the outer Indriyas, and then enters the body via those Indriyas. In other words, it is not generated from within. It is generated outside and then enters within. In the same manner, desires for the Panch Vishayas are not initially generated in the Antahkaran. Rather, the Indriyas first come into contact with the Vishayas externally, and then those Vishayas enter the Antahkaran. And now we're swapping the script again, talking about how we are experiencing things that are external, and from the external world we get these experiences that travel inward, and due to that the desires arise to experience certain dualities. Whereas our true self is something that actually contains them, including the external reality. To give another example, when a boil develops externally on the skin, it can be soothed only by applying medication externally, not by hearing talks. Also, one's hunger and thirst can only be relieved by eating and drinking, but not by merely talking about food and water. Similarly, the disease in the form of the Panch Vishayas can only be cured when medication is applied externally. So Sriji Maharaj, I assume, is about to go into how when it comes to the indulgence of the senses, we have to externally bar ourselves from those experiences until we have had enough time pass to no longer attach ourselves to it. The method of applying that medication, so to speak, is as follows. When one's skin touches a Vishaya, like, for example, someone whom you may be attracted to, and other objects, that object, quote-unquote, enters the Antahkaran, the inner faculties, the mind, via the skin. Then via the Antahkaran, it enters the Jiva, the soul of pure awareness. The Vishaya was not initially generated from within the Jiva or from the Antahkaran. In fact, the Vishayas which currently spring forth from the Antahkaran have definitely entered from outside through the Indriyas, albeit in a previous life. Very interesting. So the experiences that come from us have already entered us from a previous life. And we are just releasing something that was previously external. Fascinating. Thus, the medicine for eradicating attachment to the Vishayas is as follows. One should abstain from touching objects or people whom they may be attracted to, and anything else which is alluring via the skin. Also, one should not look at their beauty via the eyes, nor talk about them using the tongue. One should not listen to them or about them via the ears, nor should one smell their fragrance through the nose. if through the 5 indriyas one firmly abstains from the Vishayas in this manner, then the flow of the Vishayas cannot enter within from outside. For example, a well can be cleaned only when the small streamlets of water that flow into the well are clogged from their entrance with cloth rags. In the same way, by keeping control over the external indriyas, the external Vishayas cannot enter the Antahkaran. Again, a stomach illness can only be cured when medicine enters the stomach. In the same manner, the Vishayas that have already accumulated in the Antahkaran by way of the Indriyas should be eradicated by thinking of oneself as the Atma, the true self. One should think, I am the Atma, and the Indriyas and Antahkaran have absolutely no relation with me. With such resolute thinking, by beholding God's form in that Chaitanya, awareness, and through the bliss of one's Atma, one should remain fulfilled. Take, for example, a well that is completely full of water. The water in the well will prevent the flow of new water from entering the well. However, if the well is emptied by drawing water from it, then new water from outside will enter it. Similarly, through the bliss of one's Atma, one should remain fulfilled within. Externally, one should obstruct the quote-unquote inflow of the Vishayas through the Indriyas. This is the only definite method for overcoming lust, anger, etc. Except for this, though, they cannot be overcome by fasting alone, so please imbibe this thought firmly in your lives. Thank you for listening. I hope my commentary was not confusing, but helpful in some way. I realized that I started taking a different route in interpreting where Sriji Maharaj was going with the relation between the Indriyas, Antahkaran, and Jiva. It is true that our Jiva is actually bigger than all of those things. That actually the Jiva is what contains the Antahkaran, and the Antahkaran is what actually contains the Indriyas, and the Indriyas are what actually contains the body, and that contains the Vishayas, the experiences of the world. So there is a flow of beingness from without to within in that way. Sriji Maharaj is talking about what happens in the other direction, that since who we are truly is something much more inward, the Jiva, the pure soul of awareness, then we have to dissociate from the objects of experience. And I mean that word literally, not in the psychological term of dissociation, but in the literal sense of stopping from associating with the identity which appears before us in the form of the Indriyas and the Vishayas and the Antahkaran. We have to be very careful not to misconstrue one for another. There's a very clear sequence of layers of our existence, from our Jiva to Chitta, the inner light's reflection of consciousness, the ahankara, the ego, the buddhi, the intellect, and the manas, the mind. Those previous four represent the Antahkaran. And then from that arises the Indriyas, the senses, and from the senses arise the Vishayas, the objects of the senses, the experiences, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the touches. And in that we find the body. Notice that the only way we know of our body is through our senses. So actually our body is within the senses. All right. Thank you for listening. And Jai Swaminarayan.